Chapter 4, Part 2 of Gigolo by Edna Ferber. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Not a Day Over 21, Part 2. Harrietta was 37 and a half when there came upon her a great fear. It had been a wretchedly bad season. 2 failures. The rent on her 2-room apartment in 56th Street jumped from $125, which she could afford, to $200 a month, which she couldn't. Mary, Irish Mary, her personal maid, left her in January. Personal maids are one of the superstitions of the theatrical profession, and an actress of standing is supposed to go hungry rather than maidless. "Why don't you fire Irish Mary?" Ken had asked Harrietta during a period of stringency. "I can't afford to." Ken understood, but you may not. Harrietta would have made it clear. Any actress who earns more than $100 a week is supposed to have a maid in her dressing room. No one knows why, but it's true. I remember in The Small Town Girl, I wore the same gingham dress throughout 3 acts, but I was paying Mary $20 a week just the same. If I hadn't, someone in the company would have told someone in another company that Harrietta Fuller was broke. It would have seeped through the director to the manager, and the next time they offered me a part, they'd cut my salary. It's absurd, but there it is, a vicious circle. Irish Mary's reason for leaving Harrietta was a good one. It would have to be, for she was of that almost extinct species, the devoted retainer. Irish Mary wasn't the kind of maid one usually encounters backstage. No dapper, slim, black and white pert miss with a wisp of apron and a knowledgeous eye. An ample, big-hipped, broad-bosomed woman with an apron like a drop curtain and a needle-knack that kept Harrietta mended, beribboned, beruffled, and exquisite from her garters to her coat-hangers. She had been around the theatre for 25 years. And her thick, deft fingers had served a long line of illustrious ladies. Corinne Foster, Gertrude Bennett, Lucille Varney. She knew all the shades of grease paint from flesh to sallow old age, and if you gained an ounce, she warned you. Her last name was Leesom, but nobody remembered it until she brought forward a daughter of 15, with the request that she be given a job. Anything. Walk on, extra, chorus. Liddy, she called her. The girl seldom spoke. She was extremely stupid, but a marvelous mimic, and pretty beyond belief. Fragile, and yet with something common about her even in her fragility. Her wrists had a certain flat angularity that bespoke a peasant ancestry, but she had a singular freshness and youthful bloom. The line of her side face from the eye socket to the chin was a delicious thing that curved with the grace of a wing. The high cheekbone sloped down so that the outline was heart-shaped. There were little indentations at the corners of her mouth. She had eyes singularly clear, like a child's, and a voice so nasal, so strident, so dreadful, that when she parted her pretty lips and spoke, the sound shocked you like a peacock's raucous screech. Harrietta had managed to get a bit for her here, a bit for her there, until by the time she was 18 she was giving a fairly creditable performance in practically speechless parts. It was dangerous to trust her even with an "Ah, there you are" line. The audience, startled, was so likely to laugh. At about this point she vanished, bound for Hollywood and the movies. "She's a little fool, just," said Irish Mary. "What'll she be wantin' with the movies, then? And her mother connected with the theaytre for years and all, and her, you might say, brought up in it. But she hadn't been out there a year before the world knew her as Lydia Lissom. Starting as an extra girl, earning 25 a week or less, she had managed somehow to get the part of Betty in the screen version of The Magician, probably because she struck the director as being the type. Or perhaps her gift of mimicry had something to do with it, and the youth glow that was in her face. At any rate, when the picture was finished and released, no one was more surprised than Liddy at the result. They offered her $3,000 a week on a 3-year contract. She wired her mother, but Irish Mary wired back, "I don't believe a word of it. Hold out for 5. Am coming." She left for the coast. Incidentally, she got the 5 for Liddy. Liddy signed her name to the contract, Lydia Lissom, in a hand that would have done discredit to an 11-year-old. Harrietta told Ken about it, not without some bitterness. Which only proves one can't be too careful about picking one's parents. If my father had been a hod carrier instead of a minister of the gospel and a darling old dreamer, I'd be earning $5,000 a week too. They were dining together in Harrietta's little sitting-room, so high up and quiet and bright, with its cream enamel and its log fire. Almost one entire wall of that room was a window facing south, and framing such an Arabian Nights panorama as only a New York 11th-story window facing south can offer. Ken lifted his right eyebrow, which was a way he had when being quizzical. "What would you do with $5,000 a week, just supposing?" "I'd do all the vulgar things that other people do who have $5,000 a week." "You wouldn't enjoy them. You don't care for small dogs, or paradise aigrette, or Italian villas in Connecticut, or diamond-studded cigarette holders, or plush limousines, or butlers." He glanced comprehensively about the little room. At the baby grand, whose top was pleasantly littered with photographs and bonbon dishes and flower vases. At the smart little fire snapping in the grate. At the cheerful reds and blues and ochres, and sombre blues and purples and greens of the books in the open bookshelves. At the squat clock on the mantel-shelf. At the gorgeous splashes of black and gold glimpsed through the many-paned window. "You've got everything you really want right here," his gesture seemed somehow to include himself, "if you only knew it." "You talk," snapped Henrietta, "as the Reverend H. John Scoville used to." She had never said a thing like that before. "I'm sick of what they call being true to my art. I'm tired of having last year's suit relined, even if it is smart enough to be good this year. I'm sick of having the critics call me an intelligent comedienne who is unfortunate in her choice of plays. Some day," a little flash of fright was there, "I'll pick up the Times and see myself referred to as 'that sterling actress.' Then I'll know I'm through." "You?" "Tell me I'm young, Ken. Tell me I'm young and beautiful and bewitching." "You're young and beautiful and bewitching. Ugh! And yet they say the Irish have the golden tongues." 2 months later, Harrietta had an offer to go into the pictures. It wasn't her first, but it was undeniably the best. The sum offered per week was what she might usually expect to get per month in a successful stage play. To accept the offer meant the coast. She found herself having a test picture taken and trying to believe the director, who said it was good. Found herself expatiating on the brightness, quietness, and general desirability of the 11th floor apartment in 56th Street to an acquaintance who was seeking a 6 months' city haven for the summer. She'll probably ruin my enamelled dressing-table with toilet water, and ring my piano top with wet glasses, and spatter grease on the kitchenette wall. But I'll be earning $1 million, Harrietta announced recklessly, or thereabouts. Why should I care? She did care, though, as a naturally neat and thrifty woman cares for her household goods, which have, through years of care of them and association with them, become her household gods. The clock on the mantel wasn't a clock, but a plump friend with a white smiling face and a soothing tongue. The low, ample davenport wasn't a davenport only, but a soft bosom that pillowed her. That which lay spread shimmering beneath her window was not New York alone. It was her view. To a woman like this, letting her apartment furnished is like farming out her child to strangers. She had told her lessee about her laundress and her cleaning woman, and how to handle the balky faucet that controlled the shower. She had said good-bye to Ken, entirely surrounded by his books, magazines, fruit, and flowers. She was occupying a Pullman drawing-room, paid for by the free-handed filmers. She was crossing farmlands, plains, desert. She was wondering if all those pink sweaters and white flannel trousers outside the Hollywood Hotel were there for the same reason that she was. She was surveying a rather warm little room shaded by a dense tree whose name she did not know. She was thinking it felt a lot like her old trouping days, when her telephone tinkled and a voice announced Mrs. Lissom. Lissom? Lessom. Irish Mary, of course. Harrietta's maid, engaged for the trip, had failed her at the last moment. Now her glance rested on the 2 massive trunks and a litter of smart glittering bags that strewed the room. A relieved look crept into her eyes. A resplendent figure was revealed at its opening. The look in Harrietta's eyes vanished. Irish Mary looked like the mother of a girl who was earning $5,000 a week. She was marcelled, silk-clad, rustling, gold-meshed, and oh, how real, in spite of it all, as she beamed upon the dazzled Harrietta. "Out with ye!" trumpeted this figure, brushing aside Harrietta's proffered chair. "There'll be no stayin' here for you. You're comin' along with me, then, bag and baggage." She glanced sharply about. "Where's your mate, dearie?" "Disappointed me at the last minute. I'll have to get someone." "We've plenty. You're comin' up to our place." "But, Mary, I can't. I couldn't. I'm tired. This room—" "A hole. Wait till you see the palace. Gardens and breakfast rooms and statues and fountains and them Jap boys running up and down like mice. We rented it for a year from that Goya Ciro. She's gone back east. How she ever made good in pictures I don't know, and her face like a hot water bag for expression. Liddy's going to build next year. They're drawing up the plans now. The place'll be nothing compared to it when it's finished. Put on your hat. The boys'll see to your stuff here." I can't. I couldn't. You're awfully kind, Mary, dear. Mary, dear, was at the telephone. Mrs. Lissom, that's who. Send up that Jap boy for the bags. Mrs. Lissom's name and Mrs. Lissom's commands apparently carried heavily in Hollywood. A uniformed Jap appeared immediately, as though summoned by a genie. The bags seemed to spring to him, so quickly was he enveloped by their glittering surfaces. He was off with his burdens, invisible except for his gnome-like face and his sturdy bow legs in their footman's boots. "I can't," said Henrietta, feebly, for the last time. It was her introduction to the topsy-turvy world into which she had come. She felt herself propelled down the stairs by Irish Mary, who wasn't Irish Mary any more, but a force whose orders were obeyed. In the curved drive outside the Hollywood Hotel, the little Jap was stowing the last of the bags into the great blue car, whose length from nose to tail seemed to span the hotel frontage. At the wheel, rigid, sat a replica of the footman. Irish Mary with a Japanese chauffeur. Irish Mary with a Japanese footman. Irish Mary with a great glittering car that was as commodious as the average theatre dressing-room. "Get in, dearie. Liddy's using the big car to-day. They're out on location, shootin' the last of Devils and Men." Henrietta was saying to herself, "Don't be a nasty snob, Harry. This is a different world. Think of the rotten time Alice would have had in Wonderland if she hadn't been broad-minded. Take it as it comes." Irish Mary was talking as they sped along through the hot white Hollywood sunshine. "Stay right with us as long as you like, dearie. But if, after your workin', you want a place of your own, I know of just the thing you can rent, furnished, and a Jap gardener, and a houseman and cook right on the places besides." "But I'm not signed for 5,000 a week, like Lydia," put in Henrietta. "I know what you're signed for. 'Twas me put 'em up to it. And who else? Easy money, I says, and why shouldn't she be gettin' some of it? Liddy spoke to Gans about it. What Liddy says goes. She's a good girl, Liddy is. And, would you believe, the money and all hasn't gone to her brains, though what with workin' like a 'orse, and me to steadier and shrewder than the lawyers themselves, if I do say it, she ain't had much chance. And here's the palace." And here was the palace. Sundials, rose gardens, gravel paths, dwarf trees, giant trees, fountains, swimming pools, tennis courts, goldfish, statues, verandas, sleeping porches, awnings, bird baths, pergolas. Inside, more Japs. Maids. Rooms furnished like the interior of movie sets that Henrietta remembered having seen. A bedroom, sitting-room, dressing-room, and bath, all her own, in one wing of the great white palace. Only one of thousands of great white palaces scattered through the hills of Hollywood. The closet for dresses, silk-lined and scented, could have swallowed whole her New York bedroom. "Lay down," said Irish Mary, "and get easy. Liddy won't be home till 6 if she's early, and she'll probably be in bed by 9, now they're rushin' the end of the picture, and she's got to be on the lot, made up by 9 or sooner." "9 in the morning?" "Well, sure. You soon get used to it. They've got to get all the daylight they can, and times the fog's low earlier, or they'd likely start at 7 or 8. You look a little beat, dearie. Lay down. I'll have you unpacked while we're eating." But Harrietta did not lie down. She went to the window. Below, a small army of pygmy gardeners were doing expert things to flower beds and bushes that already seemed almost shamelessly prolific. Harrietta thought suddenly of her green-painted flower boxes outside the 11th-story south window in the New York flat. Outside her window here, a great scarlet hibiscus stuck its tongue out at her. Harrietta stuck her tongue out at it childishly and turned away. She liked a certain reticence in flowers, as in everything else. She sat down at the desk, took up a sheet of lavender and gold paper and the great lavender-plumed pen. The note she wrote to Ken was the kind of note that only Ken would understand, unless you've got into the way of reading it once a year or so, too. Ken, dear, I almost wish I hadn't gone down that rabbit hole. And yet, it's rather curious, you know, this sort of life. 2 weeks later, when she had begun to get used to her new work, her new life, the strange hours, people, jargon, she wrote him another cryptic note. Alice. Well, in our country, you'd generally get to somewhere else if you ran very fast for a long time, as I've been doing. Red Queen. Here, it takes all the running you can do to keep in the same place. In those 2 weeks, things had happened rather breathlessly. Harrietta had moved from the splendours of the palace to her own rose-embowered bungalow. Here, had she wanted to do any casement work with a white rose, like that earlier heroine, she could easily have managed it, had not the early morning been so feverishly occupied in reaching the lot in time to be made up by 9. She soon learned the jargon. The lot meant the studio in which she was working and its environs. "We're going to shoot you this morning" meant that she would be needed in today's scenes. Often she was in bed by 8 at night, so tired that she could not sleep. She wondered what the picture was about. She couldn't make head or tail of it. They were filming J. N. Gardner's novel, Romance of Arcady, but they had renamed it Let's Get a Husband. The heroine in the novel was the young wife of 27 who had been married 5 years. This was Harrietta's part. In the book there had been a young girl, too, a saccharine miss of 17, who was the minor love interest. This was Lydia Lissom's part. Slowly it dawned on Harrietta that things had been nightmarishly tampered with in the film version, and that the change in the name was the least of the indignities to which the novel had been subjected. It took Harrietta some time to realize this, because they were not taking the book scenes in their sequence. They took them according to light, convenience, location. Indoor scenes were taken in one group, so that the end of the story might often be the first to be filmed. For a week, Harrietta was dressed, made up, and ready for work at 9 o'clock, and for a week she wasn't used in a single scene. The hours of waiting made her frantic. The sun was white hot. Her little dressing-room was stifling. She hated her face with its dead white mask and blue-lidded eyes. When finally her time came, she found that after being dressed and ready from 9 until 5:30 daily, she was required, at 4:56 on the 6th day, to cross the set, open a door, stop, turn, appear to be listening, and recross the set to meet someone entering from the opposite side. This scene, trivial as it appeared, was rehearsed 7 times before the director was satisfied with it. The person for whom she had paused, turned, and crossed was Lydia Lissam. And Lydia Lissam, it soon became evident, had the lead in this film. In the process of changing from novel to scenario, the young wife had become a rather middle-aged wife, and the flapper of 17 had become the heroine. And Henrietta Fuller, erstwhile actress of youthful comedy parts for the stage, found herself moving about in black velvet and pearls and a large plumed fan as a background for the white ruffles and golden curls and sunny scenes in which Lydia Lissam held the camera's eye. For years, Henrietta Fuller's entrance during a rehearsal always had created a little stir among the company. This one rose to give her a seat. That one made her a compliment. Sam Klein, the veteran director, patted her cheek and said, "You're going to like this part, Miss Fuller, and they're going to eat it up. You see." The author bent over her in mingled nervousness and deference and admiration. The young thing who was to play the ingénue part said shyly, "Oh, Miss Fuller, may I tell you how happy I am to be playing with you? You've been my ideal," etc. And now Henrietta Fuller, in black velvet, was the least important person on the lot. No one was rude to her. Everyone was most kind, in fact. Kind to Henrietta Fuller. She found that her face felt stiff and expressionless after long hours of waiting, and an elderly woman who was playing a minor part showed her how to overcome this by stretching her face, feature for feature, as a dancer goes through limbering exercises in the wings. The woman had been a trouper in the old days of one-night stands. Just before she stepped in front of the camera, you saw her drawing down her face grotesquely, stretching her mouth to form an oval, dropping her jaw, twisting her lips to the right, to the left, rolling her eyes round and round. It was a perfect lesson in facial calisthenics, and Henrietta was thankful for it. Henrietta was interested in such things, interested in them, and grateful for what they taught her. She told herself that she didn't mind the stir that Lydia Lissam made when she was driven up in the morning in her great blue limousine with the 2 Japs sitting so straight and immobile in front, like twin Nipponese gods. But she did. She told herself she didn't mind when the director said, "Miss Fuller, if you'll just watch Miss Lissam work, she has perfect picture tempo." But she did. The director was the new-fashioned kind, who spoke softly, rehearsed you almost privately, never bawled through a megaphone. A slim young man in a white shirt and flannel trousers and a pair of Harvard-looking eyeglasses. Everybody was young. That was it. Not 30 or 32 or 34 or 37, but young. Terribly, horribly, actually young. That was it. Henrietta Fuller was too honest not to face this fact squarely. When she went to a Thursday night dance at the Hollywood Hotel, she found herself in a ballroom full of slim, pliant, corsetless young things of 18, 19, 20. The men, with marcelled hair and slim feet and sunburned faces, were mere boys. As juveniles on the stage, they might have been earning $75 or $100 or $150 a week. Here they owned estates, motor cars in fleets, power boats, had secretaries, valets, trainers. Their technique was perfect and simple. They knew their work. When they kissed a girl, or entered a room, or gazed after a woman, or killed a man in the presence of a woman while working, they took off their hats, turned slowly and took off their hats. They were mannerly, too, outside working hours. They treated Harrietta with boyish politeness, when they noticed her at all. "Oh, won't you have this chair, Miss Fuller? I didn't notice you were standing." They didn't notice she was standing. "What are you doing, Miss Fuller? Yes, you did say Fuller. Names. Are you doing a dowager bit?" "Dowager bit? I see. You're new to the game, aren't you? I saw you working to-day. We always speak of these black velvet parts as dowager bits. Just excuse me. I see a friend of mine." The friend of mine would be a willow wand with golden curls, and what Harrietta rather waspishly called a Gunga Din costume. She referred to that Kipling description in which "the uniform 'e wore was nothin' much before, and rather less than 'arf o' that be'ind." "They're wearing them that way here in Hollywood," she wrote Ken. She wrote Ken a good many things. But there were, too, a good many things she did not write him. At the end of the week she would look at her cheque and take small comfort. "You've got everything you really want right here," Ken had said, "if you only knew it." If only she had known it. Well, she knew it now. Now, frightened, bewildered, resentful. 37. Why, 37 was old in Hollywood. Not middle-aged, or getting on, or well-preserved, but old. Even Lydia Lissam at 20 always made them put one thickness of chiffon over the camera's lens before she would let them take her close-ups. Harrietta thought of that camera now as a cruel cyclops from whose hungry eye nothing escaped. Wrinkles, crow's feet, nothing. They had been working 2 months on the picture. It was almost finished. Midsummer. Harrietta's little bungalow garden was ablaze with roses, dahlias, poppies, asters, strange voluptuous flowers whose names she did not know. The roses, plucked and placed in water, fell apart, petal by petal, 2 hours afterwards. From her veranda she saw the Sierra Madre range and the foothills. She thought of her unexcelled view of park, which could be had by flattening one ear and the side of your face against the window jamb. The sun came up, hard and bright and white, day after day. Hard and white and hot and dry. Like a woman, Harrietta thought, who wears a red satin gown all the time. You wish she'd put on gingham just once for a change. She told herself that she was parched for a walk up Riverside Drive in a misty summer rain, the water sloshing in her shoes. "Happy, my ducky?" Irish Mary would say, beaming upon her. "Perfectly," from Harrietta. "It's time, too. Real money you're pullin' down here, and a paradise if ever there was one. I notice, though, that as soon as they've completed a picture they take the overland back to New York and make dates with each other for lunch at the Claridge, like matinee girls." Irish Mary flapped a negligent palm. "Ah, well, change is what we all want now and then." She looked at Harrietta sharply. "You're not wantin' to go back, are ye?" "No," faltered Harrietta. Then brazenly, hotly, "Yes, yes," ending miserably with, "But my contract 6 months." "You can break it, if you're fool enough, when they've finished this picture. Though why you should want to—" Irish Mary looked as belligerent as her kindly Celtic face could manage. But it was not until the last week of the filming of Let's Get a Husband that Harrietta came to her and said passionately, "I do." "Do what?" Irish Mary asked blankly. "Do want to break my contract. You said I could after this picture." "Sure you can. They hired you because I put Liddy up to askin' them to it. I'd thought you'd be pleased for the big money and all. There's no pleasin' some." "It isn't that. You don't understand. To-day—" "Well, what's happened to-day that's so turrible, then?" But how could Harrietta tell her? "To-day—" she began again, faltered, stopped. "To-day, you must know, this had happened. It was the big scene of the film. Lydia Lissam, in black lace nightgown and ermine negligee, her hair in Marcel waves, had just been shot for it. "Now then, Miss Fuller," said young Garvey, the director, "you come into the garden, see? You've noticed Joyce go out through the French window, and you suspect she's gone to meet Talbot. We show just a flash of you looking out of the drawing-room windows into the garden. Then you just glance over your shoulder to where your husband is sitting in the library reading, and you slip away, see? Then we jump to where you find them in the garden. Wait a minute." He consulted the sheaf of typewritten sheets in his hand. "Yeah, here it is. Joyce is keeping her tryst under the great oak in the garden with her lover. Yeah. Wait a minute. Tryst under tree with... Well, you come quickly forward, down to about here, and you say, 'Ah, there you are.'" Harrietta looked at him for a long, long minute. Her lips were parted. Her breath came quickly. She spoke. "I say, what?" "You say, 'Ah, there you are.'" "Never!" said Harrietta Fuller, and brought her closed fist down on her open palm for emphasis. "Never!" It was August when she again was crossing desert, plains, and farmlands. It was the tail end of a dusty, hot, humid August in New York, when Ken stood at the station waiting. As he came forward, raising one arm, her own arm shot forward in quick protest, even while her glad eyes held his. "Don't take it off." "What off?" "Your hat. Don't take it off. Kiss me, but leave your hat on." She clutched his arm. She looked up at him. They were in the taxi bound for 56th Street. "She's moved? She's out? She's gone? You told her I'd pay her anything, a bonus?" Then, as he nodded, she leaned back, relaxed. Something in her face prompted him. "You're young and beautiful and bewitching," said Ken. "Keep on saying it," pleaded Harrietta. "Make a chant of it." Sam Klein, the veteran, was the first to greet her when she entered the theatre at that first September rehearsal. The company was waiting for her. She wasn't late. She had just pleasantly escaped being unpunctual. She came in, cool, slim, electric. Then she hesitated. For the fraction of a second she hesitated. Then Sam Klein greeted her. "Company's waiting, Miss Fuller, if you're ready." And the leading man came forward, a flower in his buttonhole, carefully tailored and slightly yellow, as a leading man of 40 should be at 10:30 a.m. "How wonderful you're looking, Harrietta," he said. Sam Klein took her aside. "You're going to make the hit of your career in this part, Miss Fuller. Yes, sir, dear, the hit of your career. You mark my words." "Don't you think," stammered Harrietta, "don't you think it will take someone younger to play the part?" "Younger than what?" "Than I." Sam Klein stared. Then he laughed. "Younger than you? Say, listen, do you want to get the Gerry Society after me?" And as he turned away, a young thing with worshipful eyes crept up to Harrietta's side and said tremulously, "Oh, Miss Fuller, this is my first chance on Broadway, and may I tell you how happy I am to be playing with you? You've been my ideal ever since I was for a long, long time." End of chapter 4, part 2.